like I know I should. But I could do without the moonlight. I could do without the dunes. I could do without the jam band playing those tunes. I could live without the starlight. I'd be fine without the sea. I could do without the traces of you and me. Every song is in and out flashback, playing havoc with the here and now. Pulling me backwards, I smile anyhow. Cool comfort in the face of a stranger. The bud is active and I'm taking my turn. A little grace in the taste of a beachside burn. But I could do without the moonlight. I could do without the dunes. I could do without the jam band playing those tunes. I could live without the starlight. I'd be fine without the sea. I could do without the traces of you and me. Say goodnight to the Century Boardwalk. I'm just a little on the tired side. Adios, mama, monkeyed up people. Sure enjoy the ride. Summer night with the beach still pulsing. Another hour and I'll crash and burn. I gotta go, but you know that I'll return. Next time, I could do without the moonlight. I could do without the dunes. I could do without the jam band playing those tunes. I could live without the starlight. I'd be fine without the sea. I could do without the traces of you and me. Yeah, I could do without the moonlight. I could do without the dunes. I could do without the jam band playing those tunes. I could live without the starlight. I'd be fine without the sea. I could do without the traces of you and me.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the music of Monkey House, which is the recording alias of songwriter, vocalist, and keyboard master Don Breithaupt. That's from an album he released in 2012 called Headquarters. We're going to be talking about that album and also another one released this year called Just Passing Through, the Breithaupt Brothers Songbook Volume 2, which features a variety of vocalists performing songs written by Don and his brother Jeff. Though he attended Berklee College of Music in Boston and is currently residing in Los Angeles, he grew up in Toronto, with his Canadian upbringing not only figuring prominently in his musical outlook, but it also explains his connection to some of the finest musicians Canada has to offer. We're in for a lot of great music with this one, so let's get right to it. Joining me on the phone from Los Angeles, California is Don Breithaupt. Welcome.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So let me start by asking you how winter in L.A. compares to winter in the Great White North.
Good Lord, there's a world of difference. You know, I start my day every day this time of year looking at Facebook and all my fellow Torontonians complaining about, you know, how they got blown across a parking lot as if they were on skates, or they opened their front door and the snow was up to the top of the door jamb. And then they ask me how I am, and it almost hurts to tell them.
Yeah, well, I'm in Arizona, so I get sort of the similar thing. And we pay the price in the summer, but in the winter, it's pretty mild. How long ago did you move out there?
It'll be 2 years pretty soon. Just coming up on 2 years now.
All right, so you paid your dues.
Oh, yeah. I shoveled a few driveways.
Well, the song we just heard is called I Could Do Without the Moonlight, which appears to be about, harboring some unfair resentment towards your surroundings because they happen to remind you personally of someone you'd rather not be thinking about. What inspired that song?
I find it tough sometimes to explain my lyrics in a strictly autobiographical way, because sometimes they're just a little turn of thought that creates a little scenario that I could dip my toe into and see what that would be like to be that guy. And I think that song is kind of in that category. It's just that feeling of, all this is great on paper, but, I'm really bugged about something, or I'm really sad about something. And so the fact that there's this great band playing and there's a bonfire at the beach and people are smoking and drinking happy things, and, none of that matters because your brain is a powerful organ and can override all that stuff.
And that's that thing where the lyrics are, like you say, negative and you're being bugged, but the melody and the easygoing groove sort of belies that, so there's that contrast.
Right, which is kind of the Steely Dan, Randy Newman, Harry Nilsson school of lyric writing, where the happier the melody is, the more of a bummer the lyrics have to be.
Well, it worked for them.
Yeah.
Now, the opening track on the album is called Checkpoint Charlie. I used to live in Germany myself, and our engineer, Mike Post, is actually from Berlin, where, along with the wall, of course, Checkpoint C was once a symbol of the Cold War. It was a station where people used to cross between East and West Germany prior to reunification. Your lyrics make it clear that you're using the term as an analogy for a barrier between people, but it's a little less clear precisely what that barrier actually is. So could you enlighten us as to your intentions on that one?
Yeah, well, there's an Elvis Costello song called Oliver's Army, and as far as I know, he was the first person to make Checkpoint Charlie, Checkpoint C into a person, metaphorically, and I thought that was an interesting thing. And I was actually at the point where I was out of my marriage and sort of re-immersing myself into the roulette game known as dating, and finding that to varying degrees, depending on who you were across the table from, you might have your defenses up to one degree or another, and that it was just me sort of personifying the last checkpoint before someone actually really gets to know you.
Well, yeah, musically that track is evocative of Steely Dan, which is true of a lot of your tracks, but not all of them. You've got one called Too Much, Too Much that has more of a Stevie Wonder vibe. The guest guitarist on that one is Rick Emmett from the Canadian power trio Triumph. The lyrics touch on a number of things, including moon landing skeptics, so there must have been some sort of impetus for that one.
Yeah, I think that one was kind of a pet project that I'd had going for years, actually, where I wanted to write something that addressed the kind of disconnect between what you know to be true scientifically and what your five senses are telling you. And that feeling of the more you know about physics or astronomy or whatever, the more it doesn't actually make sense with what you're experiencing day to day in three dimensions. And so the too much is just, it's too much to contemplate the full thing, space-time and gravity bending light and all that stuff. And, we're just trapped in our bodies and we're just getting the input we get. And it's kind of the fight between the lizard brain and the higher scientific brain. The reason I put Rick Emmett on guitar on that song was I felt like the whole idea of the song was a little cerebral, and it would suit it to have somebody come in and just crank the amp up and blow the walls out.
Right. I was playing on it is good, and it's a little bit more rock and less jazz, so it's effective in that regard. Well, the next song I'm going to play is called The Thinking Man's Me. Now, this is one of your most Donald Fagen-esque compositions to my ears, both musically and lyrically. It sounds like something he might have actually written. It seems to be about not wanting to associate with snooty, judgmental type people. Was it inspired by an actual incident?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one. I mean, I'm of two minds about that. I'm a great admirer of intellectual people and well-read people, but there's just that fine line where they tip over into just loving the smell of their own farts. And it's this kind of the idea of the song is that he's hoping that if he recreates himself as kind of the best version of himself, or the thinking man's him, that this woman he's addressing in the song will come to her senses and realize he actually was great and they should be together, etc., etc.
That reminds me of an episode of Cheers where Cliff Clavin tried to change his personality, just failed miserably.
Right, okay, I'll take that. I like Cheers.
Well, let's listen to it. From the 2012 Headquarters album, here's Monkey House with The Thinking Man's Me.
Box of 3-ply tissues, talking about my commitment issues. The doctor told me, sold me on the notion I was getting in the way of my happiness. Those little things that used to drive you crazy, baiting your friends and being stone cold lazy. One by one they disappear, and here you see an ordinary fool at the wrong address. 'Cause the best I've ever been is the way I was with you, but I stopped my fondest dreams coming true. And if you check me out again, you're gonna like what you see. New flair and new integrity. Now that I'm trying so hard to be the thinking man's me. Ooh, the thinking man's me. Remember the time I dissed your daddy, smoking his pipe in that long black caddy. Cocktails at the country club, a snub was soon detected in my eyes. It was not my scene. Now that I know what a purebred pooch is, to tell you the truth, I prefer my stooges. Curly Larry Moley show a certain joie de vivre you can't disguise on a plasma screen. Still the best I've ever been is the way I was with you, but I stopped my fondest dreams coming true. And if you check me out again, you're gonna like what you see. New hair and new integrity. Now that I'm trying so hard to be the thinking man's me. You wish me good luck, dear. I open the door for you. William Butler wouldn't have let you through. best I've ever been is the way I was with you. But I stopped my fondest dreams coming true. And if you check me out again, you're gonna like what you see. New air and new integrity. We could have used a little honesty. Now I'm trying so hard to be. Said I'm trying so hard to be the thinking man's me. The thinking man's me. Socrates, Sophocles, Aristophanes, Euripides.
Well, I love that line about having new hair and new integrity.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that's the only song I've ever heard that contains shout-outs to both Socrates and the Three Stooges.
Right. Well, again, it's your higher brain and your lower brain both being engaged in trying to sort out the world.
Well, now let's talk about Emily Einstein. This one's about a woman with above-average intelligence and a male protagonist who comes to the realization that he's probably not smart enough for her. So again, we're talking about real people or fiction?
Well, in this case, it's fiction, and there's a little tradition of those songs. I probably should have a laundry list of them, but one of them that comes to mind is She's So High, which is a Tal Bachman song from a few years ago. Just that feeling of, how could I ever deserve this girl? The Mayor of Simpleton by XTC. I don't know if you know that track, but
yeah, I do.
That's another sort of, I love this girl, but is she too smart for me kind of thing. And it's, just taking that idea and pushing it as far as it'll go, and the conceit of her being we don't know if Emily Einstein is a nickname in the song or if maybe that really is her surname, but I had a lot of fun with that and actually wrote it more as a kind of power pop, Badfingery, Raspberries kind of sounding track, and the original demo is a lot like that. It's sort of just a guitar, meat and potatoes, guitar quartet kind of tune. And I really wanted to do it on the record and thought, well, it just does not sound enough like Monkey House to be on a Monkey House album.
Yeah, I could see that.
So reinvented it and put the fretless bass kind of hook into it, and I think I got it into the right neighborhood anyway to belong on a Monkey House record.
Well, it's the perfect time of year to talk about your song December Girls, a nostalgic look back at young love amid much snow imagery. Was it inspired by a particular memory from your youth?
Yes, but I don't think I'll mention it on the radio, mention this girl by name. But, yeah, and it's sort of, in a more general sense, it's specifically maybe kind of Northeast and or Canadian feeling of just having a crush on someone, and the only place you can go if you're a kid and you're too young to drive still is just hang around outside. And sometimes it's all you can do to keep the circulation going long enough to find out if the feeling's mutual.
I should mention that the song contains a reference to well-known Canadian Otis Redding.
Well, yeah, you caught me not name-checking a Canadian there. But that actually, I managed to rhyme in that lyric, moments sledding with Otis Redding. It's not an exact rhyme, but it's pretty good.
It is. You also...
It's not like a stock rhyme.
You also have the Noel Redding option, too.
That's right.
But, Otis Redding is more likely to win over a frozen female Canadian heart probably than, Noel Redding is.
than Noel Redding is. Yeah, Hendrix band members don't have the same effect.
No, Otis was unique in that regard. Well, now it's time to listen to another track. This one appears to be about the polarized social climate we live in, where we're constantly hearing people from opposite extremes sniping at each other, while most of us occupy a more rational middle ground between those extreme viewpoints. So am I reading that about right?
You were reading you're getting the backstory and all these lyrics just perfectly. I think you're setting the record, yeah, because that's exactly what that's about. I thought one day I had the radio on, some talk radio was going in my car. I was on the way to a gig, and I thought, these two people don't realize that they think they're on opposite sides of this question, but they're both so extreme, they might as well be on the same side. And then I sort of had this image of a circle where if you follow it around, they're actually right next to each other at the extreme.
Well, one thing I can tell you about this song is that my two sons, I've been listening to your music a lot, of course, for the last few weeks, and sometimes it's in the car, and they're in the car with me. And this particular song must have been the one that grabbed them, because I walked through the room, they were playing video games. I was like doing the laundry or something, and they were both singing the chorus to this song. We never discussed it or anything. It just came on, they heard it, and it stuck with them. So in the demographic of 4 to 7-year-old males, you're a hit.
Right, all I need is about 10 million more of them, and then we really got something here.
Well, they don't quite have disposable income yet, so you probably want to...
No, that's right. They're not the perfect demographic.
No, you need like
better.
10 or 12 rich kids is what you need.
That's right, who can start their own label. But funny you should mention that, because that was the American single from the record, and just grazed the Billboard chart. But it's got a lot of smooth jazz and kind of hot AC play, and I think part of the reason that younger people relate to it is the turntable scratching layer in there just feels like it's a little more contemporary.
Even though this one sounds a bit less like Steely Dan, ironically, it's the one with the most tangible connection to them in the person of Michael Lenhart, who has been playing trumpet in the Steely Dan horn section since 1996, and he also co-produced Sunken Condos, the most recent Donald Fagen solo album. So that was quite a coup.
That was, yeah. I've been working with Michael on and off for years now, doing my Breithaupt Brothers shows in New York annually, and we always put together a band there, and whenever Michael's in town, he does it with us, and the most recent one, which was just in September, was no exception, and I thought there was no reason not to ask him to play on that Monkey House record, and I just crossed my fingers that he had time and he could say yes, and he did. So he just sent me, he cut it in New York at his own studio, and then sent me, I think, 3 or 4 solos, and I picked my favorite. They were all brilliant, of course.
Yeah, he's used to working for some taskmasters. I mean, Fagen and Becker, I don't know how they convey their feelings on a trumpet solo, but I'm sure that he knows when he's doing something they like and when he's doing something they don't like. So I'm sure it was kind of like a nice breezy day in the park for him doing your project.
Right. Yeah. The thing I've heard various times about Donald and Walter is that if you're doing well, they're quiet, and if you're doing poorly, you'll hear about it. But there's no kind of other end of the scale where you're getting effusive praise as you're, doing your overdub.
Right. Yeah, Michael Urbano, who recorded with Todd Rundgren, said Todd Rundgren, when he's listening to final mixes, he would read the paper or something, and then he would listen with his subconscious mind, and then at the end, if he said, well, that one didn't bother me, that meant it was perfect, meaning there was nothing in the track that caught his subconscious attention as it played.
Uh-huh. That's interesting. That's not a bad test, actually. That's the kind of drive home from the session and put the CDR in your car player and just let it become part of the atmosphere and see how it feels out in the real world instead of in the little in the laboratory.
Yeah, because we always get so focused like a laser beam.
Oh, you get so seduced and you're down the rabbit hole and you don't even know if you like it anymore until you get it outside.
Well, I do like this song, so let's check it out. From Headquarters, featuring the great Michael Lenhart on trumpet, this is called Faith in the Middle.
take a ride on a sliding scale. West on west is destined to fail. I'm at the bottom of the circle where left meets right, and everything feels so black and white. Faith in the middle, faith in the middle, faith in the middle. You got it. Faith in the middle, faith in the middle, faith in the middle. I'm done telling Alice which drink to drink. Don't wanna do another blues using Indian ink. Paint a model of the bottle with the bottle half full. Aristotle is the god of medium cool. Faith in the middle, faith in the middle, faith in the middle. You got it. Faith in the middle, faith in the middle, faith in the middle. Culture wars. I wanna break on through, but I don't like the doors. I got a new resolution for a New Year's Day. I'm gonna see the world in shades of gray. Faith in the middle, faith in the middle, faith in the middle. Faith in the middle.
Aristotle is the god of medium cool. That's quite a line. We need to acknowledge Julie Crochetier, the female voice heard so prominently there at the end. She appears on 4 or 5 of the tracks. Was that to get a different texture, or was it a range issue, or perhaps both?
Let me think. I think the only tune where it was a range issue was Checkpoint Charlie, where I just liked, I could have put that one maybe down a third or something and been really comfortable singing the chorus. But I just, certain tunes, the changes just sit perfectly in a certain key, and it was great in G, and I didn't want to mess with it. Mm-hmm. And so I brought her in for that one, and then I had always pictured Faith in the Middle as an octave-doubled melody. So that was another one. But, she's just a super stylish, distinctive voice, but also she's a musician. She's also a keyboard player, and so she reads, and you give her weird snaky harmonies to sing, and she'll get what the note is in the chord and really internalize stuff quickly. So she's fantastic for layering up background vocals as well.
Yeah, it's nice that you used her sort of sparingly. I mean, she's on like 4 or 5 of them. She's not on the whole album or just one track. She pops up here and there, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a fine line trying to maintain the identity of the record without actually having the same menu for each song.
Right.
Just sort of spread it around enough. So, I mean, that was the first album I had ever made as Monkey House where the rhythm section was the same through the whole record.
Yeah.
The bass and drums are the same. And I'd always sort of, because I was such a Steely Dan freak, I just assumed that, you had to have 5 drummers and 7 bass players on every record. But the one that is in pre-production right now, I'm thinking of going with the same guitar player on all the beds as well. So it'll just be, the fundamental, the groove of all the tunes will be the same 4 people, which I hope will give it a real cohesiveness.
Well, I spoke about this with John Harrington when he was here, because he was on Two Against Nature, which was that, a lot of different combinations. And then he said on Everything Must Go, they wanted the band identity on every track, so they use the same rhythm section on every track. And of course, if you have Keith Carlock, you might as well use him on every track. I mean, that guy's awesome.
Absolutely, and I think that's the reason I actually prefer Everything Must Go. It's because it just feels more like a band.
Cohesive.
Than Two Against Nature, 2VN, I always call it.
Right, well,
but yeah, Carlock, I think that was the first time they actually used the same drummer on a whole record, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, like I said, if he's your drummer, because we've also had C.J. Vanston on, and when Simon Phillips left Toto, they needed to get somebody, and they got Keith, and I'm sure they're equally happy with him. Yeah,
I think it won't be long till we're living in a world where there are, 10 name bands out there, all of whom think Keith is their drummer.
Yeah, he'll probably be working with Ozzy pretty soon.